Great to be back again at this session. Um, the last one I mentioned, this is in self-leadership, I mentioned triggers. I said a leader needs to understand his or her triggers. And what do I mean by that? All this is linked to self-control. And I think it's the most important aspect of self-control. And this has to do with emotional triggers. So maybe I should have actually included the word emotion. So these are emotional triggers, and every leader needs to understand his or her own emotional triggers. So we have triggers when a leader is responding to a situation in a room or responding to a situation in their role of leadership. So how does this happen? Every leader has triggers. One leader's trigger or list of triggers may be different from another leader's list of triggers. And I'll give you examples of triggers in a moment, but let me just first say what you need to do. As a leader, you need to take responsibility for your emotion. Responsibility. I think it's one of those things that if you learn how to take responsibility, be aware, self-aware, learn how to take responsibility for your own emotion. Don't deny it. Don't make it seem like somebody else has responsibility for your emotion. You take personal responsibility for emotion. So if you behave badly or you respond badly, it's your responsibility. Yeah, it might be important that somebody in the room triggered this, but it's still your responsibility. So what do I mean by this? Own it. The other thing is, number 2, understand the type of emotion that has been triggered. Is it happiness? Is it sadness? Is it anger? You need to understand what type of emotion is triggered. Then number 3, you need to know why this trigger is so important to you. So now let me give you some examples of what triggers are. Now, different people have a different set of or list of the triggers that they have, but I'm just going to give you a few, random few from some triggers that over the years I've come to understand. Sometimes you may feel this sense or have this sense that you are not valued. That might be a trigger. So if you're contributing to a discussion or you are leading a discussion and people respond not in the way you necessarily thought they would respond, you may have this sense, especially if you feel that this has been repeated over time, that you are not being valued. Then the other one is not being heard. You may have this sense, feeling that you are not being heard. Then sometimes there's another need that a leader might have, and this is what I mean by triggers. You may feel you're not liked. You want to be liked. So that's a trigger for you. So if you have the sense, maybe in a room, that you are not liked, it may trigger an emotion. What kind of emotion would this be? Is it sadness? Is it anger? Is it discontent? Whatever that emotion is, you need to understand. You also need to own it. And then another thing I do say is that some leaders want to be respected. It may be a need for that leader. That's why you need to know yourself. If it's a need for you, and then the trigger happens in a situation, take ownership of your emotion. Do you really need to be respected right now in this situation, at this point? Can you put that aside for a moment? Then the last one I would add is the ego being bruised. A sense of your ego being bruised. That means you don't believe that you are being respected as a leader. Now, this is another trigger. How do you deal with it? Well, this is what I say in a nutshell. 1, don't respond, or let me put it this way, don't react to every situation. Take time, breathe in, breathe out. Excuse yourself. Take time, meditate. Think about it, take a walk. You might just find out it will make a big difference. So these are some ways in which a leader can deal, when we talk deal with their own emotions or their triggers, talking about self-leadership. So this is developing yourself as a leader, leading yourself as somebody who is responsible for others or who is leading others. Now, what I do say is once you've gone and you've thought about what happened, now you can come back and give, I call, an adequate or effective or sufficient response. And I think that is the best thing for a leader to do. A leader does not need to respond to every situation or every conversation that has happened in the room. Well, I'll leave the opportunity for you to make comments because I understand that today's session is being recorded, so it may be posted. So what I'll do is I'll be looking at the comments under this particular video. Just make sure that the comments or questions you ask are relevant to the topic of this particular posting. And I'll make sure I get back to you, or at least I respond to your comments.